All right, so allow me for a bit to talk about Batman Ninja versus Yakuza
Yeah.
League.
So, uh, I did not watch this because I thought the first Batman Ninja kind of sucked. Kind of hated it. Did not care for it, to be honest. That's just me.
No,
So
that's okay. That's okay. So
yeah.
here's the thing, huh? I would say if you do decide to watch this sequel, you kind of have to
Okay.
watch the first one over. It makes a lot of sense because, yep,
But,
not surprising, it follows right after the last one, right? But just
right.
letting you know one time before I start, this is a better film, like a much better film,
Okay.
though, like
All right.
shockingly good.
Interesting.
Eh? But I will
Right.
say why in a bit, right? But I guess it's just my biases when it comes to this material, right? So for those who don't know, right, this is not actually the first time that Batman has been adapted as anime, right? I believe
Right.
if I'm not mistaken, there was oh gosh, I think the name of it was Batman anime. I can't remember the name of it right now, but there was like I think it was like an anthology film, right?
Yes, I
Yes.
vaguely remember this. It had one with Deadshot. It had one with Sting.
Yeah.
It was a bunch of them. Yeah, I
Right.
remember
And
this.
and this
I slipped my mind right now. I know what you're
yeah.
talking about.
And this came out I'll tell you
Like
when.
2008.
Yeah,
2008.
around
It's
that time.
around,
Yeah.
around when the Dark Knight came out. Yeah, I remember this.
Yes, right. Yes,
Mm.
exactly. Dude, you hit the nail on the head, right? Because I was about to say
Yeah.
this was when Warner Brothers was really starting to play around with anime, right? Especially with the Animatrix,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, you had
Right.
stuff like this, right? And I remember enjoying that when I first saw it, but I think I only saw that once in my life and I never bothered to watch it again, right? So yeah,
Right. Right.
the whole Batman anime thing is nothing new, right? But when it came to, in this case, Batman Ninja is like, okay, what is this? Because it's not based off of any like, manga or game or anything like that. It's just something that was created by Warner Brothers and some animation studio in Japan. I can't remember the name of I can't remember the name right now. 'Cause I don't know them, right? Anyway, so when I first covered it, I remember, I think, right, so what I said, if I'm not mistaken, it's like taking, all right, so like this, for those who hate anime for all the tropes and all the cliches, they will not like the show at all because it revels in the
Right.
tropes, it revels in the cliches. You have characters who are forming mechs out of the blue and they have epic fights and all that kind of thing, you know what I mean? And they're doing ninja katsu, jutsus and all that kind of thing, Well, there's one moment
Right.
actually where Batman does a jutsu just because, right? So yeah, if you just do not, if like I would say, if you just hate anime because of the cliches, then yeah, Batman Ninja is not for you.
I think what bothered me about this, I wanted this to be something more comparable to Gotham by Gaslight, where it's just a Batman in an earlier time period, but it's ninja. So somehow it's Bruce Wayne, but not really Bruce Wayne. It's more like a Japanese equivalent to Bruce Wayne. You come up with like a name like that. That's what I wanted, like something more, for lack of a better term, realistic, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
In this
Listen,
case, it just went so over the top, so insane.
yeah,
It's
and that is
relying
that is
so
relative.
much on
Yeah,
anime tropes to sell the, to
yeah.
sell the
That is,
storyline,
that
right?
is Yeah, that has turned me off. Like that whole thing with the first Batman, and I was really, really disappointed with that first one. So it's like,
Yeah.
all right. I mean, I get it.
But,
Fine. Yeah.
in jumping into the sequel now, I rewatched Batman Ninja, and believe it or
Okay.
not, I like it a little bit more. Like in retrospect, I sort of understood what it was trying to do. It was taking the tropes of Batman but merging it with the tropes of anime, and it was sort of like this weird celebration of both anime and Batman. Why Batman has stood the test of time. It's almost like it's literally a what if episode or scenario. That's what it is. It's a what if thing, right? So none of it you're supposed to really take seriously anyway, but it's just, oh, what if Batman was translated as, this anime character and Joker
Right.
was just this larger than life character, which he was, right? And they actually picked we boy Tony Hill to voice him, but I will not lie, just
Right.
after recapping this that film, I was like, yeah, Tony Hill will literally go down as one of the best voice actors for Joker I have ever heard, because boy, that man just went all in though, just having a blast with every line that he gives. He just gives it his all, right? but it is still not a perfect film, right? I just felt it was just tonally, that's just stylistically, it was just all over the place, right? Because at first I was good with just, it's the Batman villains and they take over areas of Japan and they fight each other. Okay, cool. But in the third act, everybody have mechs and they fighting, and then it's to the point that they all form into like a Voltron kind of thing. I'm like, what?
Yeah, it went.
Yeah, it just went too
that
over the
whole
top.
thing is still no. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hate it.
So, in the case of this film here, right, so what it's about, right, it's literally centered a day, right, after the event of the first one, right? So, in a nutshell, what happened in the first film is that Gorilla Grodd, of all people, decided to make this sort of time machine, sort of space-time continuum device called the Quick device, right? And because of that, a majority of, Gotham's heroes and villains got transported to feudal Japan, right? And through, timey-wimey shenanigans, they pretty much acclimatize to the settings and surroundings now. So they form territories and they become used to the place now, And then when Batman just sort of show up, he's the last one to show up and everybody else already acclimatized, even right down to like Nightwing and, Robin and all that kind of stuff. And then of course, Joker and Harley Quinn already there as well doing their thing. And yeah, it's just a bunch of insane shit. And then, basically they use parts of the Quick machine to return home, right? So they return home, and literally a day later now, they hear, as in, our heroes, as in Batman and, Red Hood and everybody else, hear of a Yakuza hurricane. That's all I'm going to say, a Yakuza hurricane, right? That's what it is, right? And I like, first of all, that the show is self-aware. And that's a term I'm going to use in my review for this show here, right? It's self-aware enough to be like, okay, this makes no sense. It's kind of stupid. What is this about, right? So they explain now, at least they show what, is causing this thing, right? This phenomena. And it just so happens that because of the whole Quick engine shenanigans, there is an alternate version of Japan. Or I should say, it's, how to say it, but it's like they try to do the thing where it's like almost like a planet is leaning closer towards Gotham. So in other words, it's like literally our heroes, the ones who were went through the whole time machine thing, right? Time warp, whatever you call it. They are actually able to see Japan, like they will actually see it hovering over the sky. Like I talk more like a planet itself. Like let me just see the planet itself. The alternate planet, if you will, I know it makes no sense, but work with me here, is downward, like it's leaning downward. So it's almost like the sky in a sense, so they could see it. And because of that, now they could actually fly up if they use the bat wings or whatever it is. They could fly to that particular spot. And when they get there, it is a whole new reality. That's what it is. It's weird, but work with it, right? So they go there to investigate now. And what happened is that the Justice League that we know and love now, they are, this is the alternate version of them, right? So what the show does is that they say, here's what, going back to the title. Now now Japan is split up into these Yakuza territories, right? And each person, it's basically two main groups, right? But one group, the big bad group, right? Who is which is pretty much run by Ra's al Ghul of all people, right? Or Ra's al Ghul.
Right. Yeah, Ra's al Ghul, right? Cool.
He get now some of our favorite Justice League characters, right? So in this case, they are like Yakuza bosses and enforcers, right? And his main enforcer just so happened to be Superman. And they actually gave him a name, what is by Kalaku. The idea with it now, I butchering the Japanese name, but the idea of it now is that if you were to say the English name Clark in Japanese, like
right. The
Romanized,
like the Romanized version. Right? Yeah, it's a Romanized version, right? Cool.
Right, exactly. Yeah, Clarku. Like it sounds like that, right? When you say it.
Right.
Yeah. Right. But I'll get to that in a bit, right? So yeah, he's a mean bad guy. He's a mean tough guy and all of this, right? And as far as the good people go, it is Diana. That's how they pronounce, as Wonder Woman, right? So she is there, right? And of course, Batman runs into her, and together, the two of them and the other Robins team up against essentially well, Ra's al Ghul, Superman, Green Lantern, in this case, a woman. I forgot the character name. 'Cause I'm not familiar with
As
the.
it
Um,
have two female Green Lantern women. So it have Joe Mullen and Cruz, something Cruz, I think.
okay, I
Hispanic and I
think
think.
is
Like,
the.
it have no.
All right, I am assuming that
It
it
have
is
a brown and
someone
a black one.
else. All right, well,
It have a
it's
brown and a black one.
okay. So I don't
A
know
brown
if
girl and a black girl.
all right, so I don't know if they invent this one for the show or if there was like another one before in the past. But forgive me, folks, I'm not familiar with all things Green Lantern, right? So that's me.
Right.
And Aquaman and the Flash,
Okay.
right? So they all
Okay.
like these badasses in this weird version of Japan and all that kind of stuff, right? And
Right.
that is pretty much the long and short of the story. So as I said before, folks, I kind of enjoy this, but here's why.
Okay.
It is the right mix of silly, stupid, smart, and self-aware.
Okay.
And it blends those things so well. It will always throw something so over the top at you, right? But there's always like a moment where it's like, when you really think about it, that is kind of clever, and you'll just throw
Right.
something that is so, like self-aware, like it's almost as if the creators, the filmmakers learn their mistakes from the last one, right? Because I felt with Batman Ninja, the original film, it wasn't self-aware enough. It was just, we just here and as if you had to make sense of things, right? In this case, you don't have to make sense of every single thing, but the show always reminds you, listen, don't take this seriously. It's just a what if scenario. We having fun, right? And that's really what it is. Because I had a blast watching this, right? I think for me, going back to biases, I think the reason why I enjoyed Boy is just the Yakuza worship. I am a fan of Yakuza films, right? I'll just throw out a few titles, right? These are films that if you want to learn about that genre of film, you need to check out, right? There's a blink and you miss it reference to probably what they call the godfather of the Yakuza films. That would be Battles Without Honor or Humanity, right? And how they do that, a stop and a clap. I was like, yep, that's my shit. That's my shit. I love how they do that, right? All I would just say, it involves a title or a credit, if you will, right? When you see it, you know what I'm talking about, right? Also, they make references to classic Jidaigeki or samurai films, especially of the 70s, especially with the character of Diana, i.e. Wonder Woman. Right?
I got that the first Batman Ninja did a ton of references as well, and so I can imagine people like enjoying it in that level. It's just that is not the story I wanted.
I know, yeah. But in the case of Diana now, they pull from, all right, so one is one of my all-time favorite samurai films, right? That would be Lady Snowblood, right? In the case of, you have this chick who have this umbrella, but it also have a sword in it, right? So you do that, right? Mm-hmm. And another film that I found out about, years ago, right? Called Sex and Fury. Yes, that's the title of the show. Yes, there's fury. Yes, there's sex, but it's a badass film, right? But it also, in this case, it involves this, like in Lady Snowblood, it was about this samurai. In this case, is like this female Yakuza enforcer who's like a badass and whatnot, right? So it's like that, right? But it's awesome. You need to check it out, right?
Yeah.
And I saw that in her character, in terms of the costume, how she talks, all that kind of thing, right? Also, speaking of talking, right? There's an English and a Japanese dub for this, right? I strongly recommend listening to the English dub, because them voice actors understood the assignment. They got it.
Okay.
They are just so boisterous in terms of how they deliver the lines. And the lines are, how to say, boy? This is some video game dialogue, like let me just say fighting game kind of stuff, like the kind of stuff that you would hear characters say like in a Mortal Kombat game before they fight, before they hear round one, is that kind of dialogue, right? And I was all for it. It's just so over the top and silly and big and larger life, but it works, right? When Aquaman covered by the way how he talks, but it's just like, I get it. Like, I know what the show is doing, and the show is doing it so well, right? So again, it's just that self-awareness that I love about the show. Like, the show is not trying to be something that it's not. It is supposed to be wild and insane and silly, right? But at the same time, it is at its core just this, let me just say, a Elseworlds kind of story, right? Where the good guys find themselves in a strange timeline or whatever, and some heroes are bad, right? That's where it is simple. They're just simple to the core. That's really what it is, right? And I felt like they did that conceit a lot better than they did in Batman Ninja, where it was trying to do the same thing, but I just felt it just. All right, I'll put it like this, right? I felt like in the last film, there was not emphasis on the other characters, just sort of zeroing in on like Gorilla Grodd, Catwoman, Harley Quinn, Joker, and all that kind of stuff. But there was Deathstroke there. There was Two-Face there, right? There was other people there, and they didn't really zero in on them. In this case here,
Right.
you see Aquaman, you see his skill sets, and they're badass. You see Green Lantern's skill sets, and it's badass, right? They zero in on characters and what they could do and how they fit in the world, how they see themselves and whatnot, right? And like say Flash, for example. Who are they? I think his name is I think it is Barry, but how they pronounce it, it's like a Japanese, pronunciation of Barry, right? But it's well done. But yeah, just the design of Flash, the way how he moves and whatnot. I mean, it is the speedster that we know, but it's just the Yakuza context of it that really, really clicked with me. Like, I just love what they did with that, right? And that's how they took him down without spoiling anything was kind of clever. It was kind of clever,
Right.
but it's all based off of what you know or what, yeah, it's just given what you would know of the characters. And that's another thing I really dug about the show. You could tell that it, I felt like we didn't really get that with Batman Ninja, but in this case, it really does feel like, yeah, like the creators knew about the characters. They knew a lot about the skill sets, their weaknesses and whatnot, right? And how they showcase them make a lot of sense. It's not just we just took the archetype of Superman and just did what we want. No, you could tell like they know
Right.
the character and just put their own kind of spin on it, right? But us who are familiar with the characters could watch and be like, yeah, that is how you would move, right? So like with Superman, for example, I love how they touch on, yeah, what if, similar to like Red Sun, for example. Yeah, what if, he crash land on another planet, right? But in this case, it's like he
Right.
crash land in Japan and he just became part of this, Yakuza, clan or whatever it is, and he become the leader.
Correct.
That's the scenario. That makes sense. I like that. It's stupid, when you think about it, but it's like, again,
Right.
it's a what if, it's an Elseworld scenario. That's what it is. So I felt like this show leaned towards the Elseworld stuff a lot more, and you got some really solid action sequences just off of that, right? The stuff
Yeah.
with Superman and Batman, we actually get a BVS like fight scene, and it worked, right?
Yeah.
I love how it just touch on what Batman is about and what Superman is about. You get that there. That's just everybody, whether it's Superman or Aquaman, it's the stuff that we know about them, but again, it's just from a Yakuza/anime lens, and it works, right?
Right.
A few more things. I felt like the animation stepped up in this one, right? It has there's more of an effort to make the animation look 2D, even though it
Right.
is 3D short. It's that sort of cell. What is why is cell shaded or
Okay.
yeah,
Well,
it's that
I
kind of style.
suppose yeah. Okay. Right.
Yeah.
So it's kind of self shading. Okay, no problem.
Yeah, but they make a considerable effort to make the characters look more 2D, especially when it comes to the mouth movements. 'Cause I felt in the last film it looked a little, off. It looked a little robotic,
Right.
it looked a little too stilted. That's all I'll say in terms of mouth movements. I think here it looks a lot more fluid, right? And it really works again, because they want to kind of maintain. They want to give it more of an anime look to it, and you really see it with the Diana character. Like when you look at her character, it really works, right? As far as this couple of gripes though, I felt they didn't really do much with Joker. Joker is there once again, voiced by Tony Hill, if I'm not mistaken, but they really didn't do much with him, to be honest, right? They give Harley Quinn something to do, right? Because she working alongside Diana, right? And just the little relationship that they set up there was kind of cool as well, right? That reminds me, there are a couple of references to movies. So they do one, like let me just say without spoiling much, they do an sort of their own version of the intro song to Lady Snowblood. When you see it, you'll know what I'm talking about, right? It don't make sense in the context of the story, but it's just sort of there just to be there. Like it's funny and it's entertaining to watch. but I enjoy it because I know what they're referencing, right? But like it just didn't need to be in the show ultimately, but it was just there, and I just sort of like it was fun, but like in the story, it was just like, okay, why would you do this? But whatever. There's even they even do their own take on how to say where like late 70s, early 80s anime intros, especially involving robot mechs and whatnot. They do their own version of that. That was hilarious shit. And they actually like did their own Japanese like language song and whatnot though. And just the way how it looked, there's the attention to detail when it comes to like the aesthetic. I thought it worked, but in the context of the show, that actually makes sense. It was really, really hilarious in my opinion, right? But yeah, again, I just did not. Oh, I should mention one last thing, and I thought that the action sequences were just badass, though. You know what I mean? It is wild, over the top, very video game inspired, but it just worked, though. You know, in terms of just how crazy this whole conceit is, and just how larger than life the characters are, especially the Yakuza League, right? It just totally fit, right? So I would say if you're an anime fan, and if you're a DC fan, but in particular if you just a fan of like just a Yakuza films, yeah, you would love I would say you would flat out love this though. This was just a lot of fun, right? But this is within the realm of shut your brain off entertainment, right? Because yes, I would admit this as a wrap up here, when it comes to the whole time and, space-time continuum and reality bending on itself, as, as Rachel Gould explained, it sounds like it makes sense, but when you really stop and think about it, it's like,
normal silliness, yeah.
Yeah. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. But, in the world of this, it expects you to just shut your brain off and just be like, whatever, I don't care, Superman is a Yakuza badass with shades on. That's what I'm here for. I'm not here to find out what happened to the real Clark. I'm just here to see Japanese Yakuza Superman. That's what it is, right? So, and just as a whole, boy, it just has this wild irreverence to it that was just magnetic to me, boy. I was just roped in from the start. Like, as the moment they start dropping references to old shows and, tropes and whatnot, I was like, yep, I know exactly where you're coming from, and I am on board, and I'm fucking with all of this, right? So yeah, believe it or not, I really, really enjoy this, right? But I will say, as I get to rating, this is a guilty pleasure for me. This is just that shut your brain off and have fun shows, right? So I would say, if you did not enjoy Batman Ninja, trust me, this is a far superior sequel, right? Just mainly because it just understood the material. It knew how to balance, again, the silly with the smart, with the stupid, and the self-aware. But more self-awareness in this case is more of, yes, folks, we know this is dumb, but work with it. We're entertaining you here, right? And if you just look at it as a what-if episode or Elseworlds episode or whatever it is, that's the joke. That's what it is, right? You're not supposed to take this thing so seriously, right? As the first film kind of wanted us to. And I think that's the problem with the first film. It kind of wanted us to take it seriously, but you couldn't.
Well, I didn't get that
when
at all.
they started to throw things at you. It was too much.
I didn't get
it was system overload.
Yeah.
It
started kind of serious, and then it just went to bananas. Like, oh, you want me to take this seriously or not? I was confused by that, to be honest.
Listen, speaking of bananas, right? I forget this moment happened in the first film. So for some reason, right? Robin, as in Damien, right, end up having this monkey sidekick, and there's a moment where the monkey sidekick bring a ton, like a shit ton of monkeys,
I remember that.
And they form this giant.
I remember that. Yeah.
That still makes no fucking sense. That still makes no sense.
That would really lose me.
Yeah, but again, that's all cliche stuff. That's the point. It's not supposed to make sense. But in the world of this, it still didn't make any sense. At least in this one, they kind of tone that down, so you don't get too much ridiculous stuff, except for the stuff involving the Yakuza henchmen. But to the show's defense, but again, I just speaking as somebody who just knows enough of Yakuza films, right? Like in those films where you always have those guys with the knives, right? The knives is just kind of unsheathed and you just rush up to people. And it's like a whole squad will just sort of run down somebody and gang up on them and kill them. That's what they try to do. But in this scenario, it is just the most over the top version of that. That's the summary of it. But if that in itself in the movie does not take you out of it, then you're fine. But if it does, then it's like, okay, this show is clearly not for you, right? But yeah, for what it is, I enjoy this, man. It is silly, stupid, smart, and self-aware. Way more, I would add, but it's really the self-awareness though that really worked for me with this one compared to the last one. So as a guilty pleasure movie, I will give this a 4 out of 5. I really dug it. It was entertaining from start to end. Just a lot of fun. Just the references or whatnot. I mean, if you're not familiar with these with the subgenres they poking fun of, that's fine. But overall, just have fun with it. That's really what it is. And I'll close this, right? And it's really testament to how timely these characters are, right? Where you can have movies that just present them in different scenarios, right? Whether it's serious anime or it's silly anime, right? But it's never to the point that it dumbs down the characters or makes them stupider than they are, right? I mean, look, like even Teen Titans Go, which is a show that I wasn't even fond of when it was announced, right?
A lot of people weren't fans of that, but it was still like still a whole thing though.
Yeah, and I would admit, I still am not on board the hype trainers yet, right? But from what I've heard, even that show and all pays respect to the characters, right? Even though it is silly and over the top and whatnot, right?
It is one of those shows that end up turning out to be interesting because of what it was trying to go for, like concept-wise. So they're just making a bunch of like meta jokes and things ultimately. So it was that. But it started making a bunch of like social commentary and these kind of things. But initially people hated it, and I get why people will be into it later. So is that?
Yeah. So as a wrap up here, right? So the issue now, well, the challenge I would say for people going into this, right? Yeah, would be to rewatch Batman Ninja. For me, rewatching it didn't feel like a chore. It didn't feel like a waste of time. I admire it just a little bit more though, despite its flaws. Yeah. But I will still say to remember what the story is about, because the show itself doesn't hold your hand and remind you of everything that happened, even though you kind of get that in the opening title sequence, but it's just more imagery than anything else. Yeah, I would say rewatch that show. But if you don't want to, then there's more than enough in this new film that you don't really have to remember every single thing. You just have to remember Quake Engine, Time Machine, Space-Time stuff, and Gorilla Grodd. That's really all you need to remember. Yeah. So you, Ricardo, I mean, I really recommend you watch this new film, but honestly, you don't need to watch the previous film, though. Just remember those 4 things I mentioned, and you should figure things out from there. Okay, not that complicated anyway. And if you think about the premise, it's like, no, this still makes no sense, but look at it. It's dumb comic book, anime, Yakuza explosion of fun. That's really what it is. It's batshit crazy and batshit fun. That's the best way I can really sum up the show. And yeah, that's really what I got from Batman Ninja versus Yakuza League. So I would say, yeah, definitely check it out, man. It's definitely worth checking out.